Today, I want to walk you through how to turn terrible feedback into some phenomenal design, because let's be honest, at some point or another, you will have heard one of the following phrases. Can you make it pop? It needs to look more premium. I'll know it when I see it, and it just doesn't feel right. Feedback like this has been around since the dawn of time. It's also not going away anywhere. But the good news is it's not your enemy. So today we're going to look at how to deal with it without firstly getting incredibly defensive, without looking at endless revisions, and most importantly, without immediately going to punch a family heirloom. Let's do it. Okay, so firstly, let's look at why vague feedback happens in the first place. And if you've been a designer or a creative of some sort for longer than, 45 minutes, you will have probably heard one of these. And if you're like most people, your immediate reaction is probably one of frustration. What are they talking about? Do they want brighter colors, bigger text, more graphics? All of the above? But all of these crap little feedback tropes arise because of one real reason. And that's because the person you're working with speaks a different language to you. You know what terms like hierarchy and contrast mean, but the person who's trying to give feedback on your work doesn't have access to those terms in their lexicon. All they see is something they don't quite like, and now they need to articulate it to you using their language, which is different to yours. And the normal way people deal with that lack of vocab is to use emotional language or metaphors. So make it pop could be their way of saying something as simple as "this doesn't excite me." Or make it more premium could be their way of saying "I wouldn't feel confident showing this to people." All they're doing here is trying to express a feeling. They're not trying to offer up a solution. That's right, feelings. Most people miss this. When a client's giving you this vague sort of feedback, it's generally the result of a couple of different feelings or emotions. The first one could be uncertainty. So something doesn't feel right. They don't know how to articulate why it doesn't feel right. There could be fear, and that's fear of the work you're delivering and they're going to be signing off. It's the fear that it won't work for whatever reason. There's an insecurity there because they want to feel like they know your language, but they don't. And then there's pressure from some explosive twat of a boss who's probably breathing down their neck to get this right. So when you hear terms like "it's close, but it's not quite there," or "this thing needs more," wow, what that person's just trying to say to you is it doesn't feel right, and I need you to help me get it to a place where it does feel right. So when you hear this type of feedback, your job isn't to immediately roll your eyes and run off to Instagram to create some daft meme. It's to translate. Your job is to take the emotion they are conveying to you and turn it into a better design. So let's break down the 5 most common feedback phrases. First, we have our old favorite, "make it pop," loosely translated to "it's not grabbing my attention in the way that I hoped it would." Now, if we translate that into our language, it's generally talking about visual weight. So maybe we need to make the more important elements a little bolder in some way. We need to change contrast. So we need to separate elements from the background more clearly, possibly. Or we need to look at hierarchy, make the most important things stand out more. And there's loads of different ways to do that. So let's say a client was looking at something like this and they said, "make the headline pop." You know that they don't mean they want it to be neon pink, right? They just mean, "I'm not noticing the headline first when I look at this," or "I just don't think it commands enough attention." So you can try things like increasing the font size. You can give it more white space around it, making it more intentional so it draws focus, or you can just bring a completely unexpected design to it. Make it premium is another one, which loosely translates to either "this looks cheap" or "I don't feel confident showing this to my audience." In design speak, this normally takes us to places like white space. Maybe we need to introduce more space to make it more intentional, look more confident, and draw people's focus to the right areas. We can refine the typography, we can simplify it, or we can introduce subtle details. So let's imagine you show something like this to a client and they say it doesn't look premium enough. You can immediately throw in a load of white space there, which gives it intent and confidence, or you can look at possibly refining some of the typography. The deadliest of all the crap feedbacks is "I'll know it when I see it." Translation of this one is pretty much, "I don't have a clear vision, and I'm hoping you'll figure it out for me." This typically means that no strategic work has been done up front. They're hoping that they're going to stumble upon the right solution with tons of trial and error, or they're protecting their ego by not admitting that they don't know what they want. So if anyone ever says to you, just show me some examples and I'll know it when I see it, your job is to immediately stop doing any more designs and go back to strategy. If they want to tell you what it's going to look like when they see it, you need to know what it looks like beforehand. You do this by showing them a ton of examples of work that already exists that you've curated from the internet. Put it all together and ask them to pick 3 examples of what they think it looks like. You break it down together, pick it apart, figure out a collective definition of what it is. Then you can go back to turning it into a design that works for them around those parameters. Next up is it just doesn't feel right. Something is off, but I can't pinpoint what. This can often mean that there is something weird going on with the design that you potentially haven't picked up on, or there's actually a legitimate design reason for it, but to the untrained eye, it just looks off. This can sometimes come down to an alignment issue, like things are legitimately not lining up. There might be a good reason for that, or there might just be something you've missed. There could be balance problems, there could be some color dissonance, or there could be some weird optical illusion that there's a perfectly legitimate explanation for. You just need to explain it. First off, check your alignment. Sometimes you might have just missed something, or you've decided to move things along for a reason that you just haven't explained. So you just need to explain these little things. There can be balance. Often, you could have weighted the design a lot more on one side than the other. And again, there could be a perfectly legitimate reason for that. But to the untrained eye, that can look a little jarring if you don't know what the thinking was behind the decision in the first place. And there's optical illusions. Now, this is a real simple one. You know, if you place a triangle bang in the center of a circle like this, it doesn't look right. It needs to be shunted a little bit to the right-hand side for it to actually look centralized. And then you've got things in typography where some letters need to appear slightly below the baseline and above the top line to make them look like they're all the same size. And to the untrained eye, people can see things like this and think they're off, when in actual fact, they're there for a very good reason. And it's little things like this that you and I just sort of take for granted, but can forget to explain occasionally. And some people see things like this and it makes things feel off. Next one up is make it professional. This can often mean that they think it feels too casual or too playful for their industry. Now, there's a big problem with this word. It's effectively meaningless. It means so many different things in different industries and in different contexts. Think of this. When a client says professional, are they picturing this or are they picturing this? The one on the left is perfectly professional for a finance company, and the one on the right is perfectly professional for a tattoo parlor. But the one on the right wouldn't be considered professional for most finance companies, although they're both, in of themselves, professional, just in different contexts. Because the word professional essentially just means competent. When people use it, they just want to look credible and competent. And these look like different things in different contexts. If you ever hear the word professional, you need to define what it means after the person uses it. In any job, you should always be working with some sort of brief. So you define what words mean in that brief. So if you come across words like premium, professional, or trendy, figure out a collective definition for those terms that you both agree on before you start working. And then you'll avoid nonsense like this. But the pattern that comes up again and again with this sort of crap feedback is that people are conveying emotions. They're not trying to convey solutions. The client isn't trying to tell you how to change a specific color or a specific font. They're just trying to explain to you how the design makes them feel. Most of these problems arise from a lack of communication, and that's normally on our part. We've made a decision. We haven't communicated why we've done it in the first place. Another thing that's good to bear in mind is the client that is providing feedback for you is often doing it through their own very filtered, narrow lens. They're just sitting at their inbox, sort of mindlessly gazing at this screen, and also very conscious of the fact that this project needs to go well because that reflects on them. That's the lens they're looking at it through, which is a very different lens than the end audience is going to be viewing this through. So it's two very different perspectives looking at the same thing. It's often good to remind people of that also. Anyway, now that we understand all that, we need to turn ourselves into translators. Step 1, don't get defensive. This is the hardest part, but the most important. When you hear anything you don't want to hear, your first instinct is always to get defensive. But getting defensive does tend to shut down conversations, and it makes people feel that they're not being listened to. So you should instead take a deep breath and remind yourself that vague feedback is not a personal attack. I saw a great analogy from a guy called Jefferson Fisher on here recently. He talked about receiving negative feedback like balls in tennis. You know those machines that just fire constant tennis balls at you while you're trying to learn to better your return? You're going to get a lot of feedback thrown at you, just like the tennis player gets a lot of balls thrown at them, and they need to decide which ones to go for and which ones to sort of let go, because some can cause them just to stretch a little bit too far and hurt themselves, so they just let them fall to the floor. And you should do the same with feedback. Sometimes some come to you and they're a bit uncomfortable to stretch for. You should just let them drop to the floor, look at them for a little bit and go, do you know what? I'm going to leave you down there. Go for the ones you know you can get a really good lob on. And you know what I said when I said it. Go for the ones you know you can hit properly, and the ones... I've thrown myself off now. Go for the ones that you know you're going to give a good hit to, and they'll help you improve your game. There it is. But most importantly, don't be a knob. You're not a knob. I can see it in your face. Your little wee face. All right, step 2. Act like a toddler. Unsurprisingly, this is a technique I've stolen from toddlers. The next time you get vague feedback from a client, you're going to ask why 3 times to get to the root of the problem. Can you make it pop? You're going to say, why do you feel it needs to pop? Because I want people to pay attention to it. You're going to say, why does that matter? And they say, I want people to click the CTA. You go, well, why is that important for your audience? And they say, because if they don't, they won't convert. Now, you know the conversion is the most important metric for this person at this given time. So that's where you can focus all of your attention. Or you can use it to point out the fact that they haven't actually thought of the audience at any point in this process, which could be an opportunity to reframe the copy that we're using on this. Just a thought. Anyway, step 3. Now we're going to translate what we've learned from the previous 2 steps into designese, or design language. Once you understand the feeling and the objective, you can translate it into a design principle and use that to educate your client at the same time. When someone tells you to make it pop, you know they're bored and unimpressed. You then know you need to increase the contrast or the hierarchy. If they want it more premium, you know it feels cheap, or they're just simply not confident showing it to anybody. You can try with playing around with white space and typography. If they say it doesn't feel right, you know they're uncomfortable or uneasy in some way. You either need to educate them as to why some decisions have been made, or you can check your alignment, balance, or any optical illusion shenanigans. If they need it to look more professional, you know it's either too casual or inappropriate. You need to define subjective terms like this and find out what they mean in the context of which they're being used. And I'll know it when I see it. You know that they have a complete unclear vision and they're uncertain of what they want. You need to go back to strategy and define the success. Step 4, preempt stuff. At the start of every project, you show examples of what there should look like, or what success should look like. This way you define the target before you even start designing. It's why you hear so many people banging on about mood boards, even though they sound a bit sort of woo-woo and something an interior designer would do. It's so important to find out what someone considers success to look like before you start working. I know a lot of designers are against this because they don't want someone to see work they've got inspiration from and have the client think they've ripped it off. But think of it like this. When's the last time you looked at a behind-the-scenes documentary for a movie, or behind-the-scenes documentary for an album or something like that? You hear a musician or a film director talk about something they've seen before that directly inspired either a drum beat in a song or a specific shot in a film. They've shown an example of something they've seen when they were kids and how they sort of took it as inspiration for what they did. You never look at something like that and think, you absolute thief. You look at it and tend to think, oh, that's clever. I can see where they got the inspiration. Your clients will do the same. If you show them something and they go, that's what I really like, and you take your interpretation of that and put it into their design, they're going to think it's clever. They're not thinking it's thievery, unless you are directly using the exact same thing, in which case probably is a little bit thievery. And step 5, educate as you go. This is the long game. Right? Every time you translate what their problem is into a design principle, you explain why you've done it. If you add more white space onto a design, simply inform them that you've done it to draw more attention to the element the white space is around. it looks more confident, it draws focus more effectively than making things bigger. The real win here is that the better feedback needs to come from you. You can get all the crap feedback in the world. It's then your job to feed back to that feedback, but with better feedback. I phrased that badly, but you know what I mean. Better feedback from you equals better work and happier clients. Most designers see bad feedback as a problem to be endured, not an opportunity that can be reframed. The only way you can solve a problem is to redefine it. And as soon as you figure that out, everything tends to change. You stop getting furious, you start getting curious. Oh, that rhymes. You stop defending your work and you start improving it. And you become the sort of designer that everybody wants to work with. Because the more defensive designers people work with, the more they're going to want to just cut you out of the loop and go straight to some AI generator. But you're not going to let that happen. You're going to be the best thinker in the room by clicking on that video next to learn the exact system I use to justify any design decision. Do the things.